If you've ever had to manage cloud security, you definitely know the feeling. You're juggling firewall rules, network security groups, and a gigantic list of IP addresses for Azure services that seems to change every single week. It's this constant, manual, frustrating dance. But what if I told you there's a much better way? Okay, let's dive in and talk about the elegant solution for taming all that cloud IP chaos.
So here's the plan. First, we'll talk about that IP address headache we all know and love. Then we'll introduce the hero of our story, Azure Service Tags. We'll look at how they work, how to put them into practice, and then, this is the really cool part, how to use them even beyond the Azure portal itself. All right, let's start with the problem that I'm pretty sure is familiar to a lot of you. I call it the IP address headache. You know, it's this fundamental challenge of trying to apply static, rigid security rules to a cloud environment that is, well, anything but static.
Does this sound familiar? You need your virtual machine to talk to Azure Storage. So you go and you look up all the IP ranges for storage in your region. You painstakingly add them all to your firewall rules. Then a month later, something breaks, and you find out after hours of troubleshooting that Microsoft added a new IP range. It's just this reactive, frustrating cycle.
And this slide, well, it lays it all out, doesn't it? The old way is a total mess of manual lookups, copy-pasting, and constantly updating these giant lists. It's just begging for a typo or a security gap. But the service tag way, it's a completely different world. You use one simple, easy-to-read name, Microsoft handles all the IP address updates in the background, and you can pretty much set it and forget. So what is this magic solution we're talking about? Let's properly introduce Azure Service Tags. They are a simple, yet incredibly powerful feature that was designed to solve this exact problem. At its heart, this is all a service tag is. The best way to think about it is like a managed alias. So instead of you having to know every single IP address for, say, Azure SQL, you just use the alias SQL. Microsoft does all the heavy lifting maintaining that list of IPs behind the scenes for you automatically. It's really that simple.
Now, what's really interesting here is how these benefits all build on each other. You're not just saving a bit of time on manual updates. No, you're creating security rules that are way cleaner, way easier to read and audit, and that means fewer errors and a much stronger security posture overall. It's really about making your infrastructure more resilient to all the changes that are constantly happening in the Azure backbone.
But, and this is a really crucial point, service tags aren't a silver bullet. Microsoft's own documentation gives us a heads up here. They're a fantastic tool for managing IP-based rules for sure, but they have to be part of a layered security strategy. They simplify one piece of the puzzle, but you still need to think about exactly what kind of traffic you're allowing through.
Okay, so we know what they are. We know why they're great. Let's get into the how. How do we actually build these into our security rules? I think you'll be surprised at just how straightforward it is. This is the whole magic trick right here. Wherever you would normally paste a giant list of IPCIDR ranges, you know, that shorthand for blocks of IP addresses, in a network security group or Azure firewall rule, you now just type in the service tag name. That's literally it. And here's what that actually looks like in practice. It's just a few clicks in the portal. You go to your security rule, and instead of choosing IP address as your source or destination, you just select service tag. From there, you just pick the tag you need from a drop-down list. It's designed to be super intuitive. All right, now for the fun part. Let's look at how we can actually use these tags to solve some really common security challenges you'll run into in Azure. A classic example is network isolation. Imagine you have a virtual machine that should never, ever be accessible from the public internet, but it does need to talk to Azure backup services. Well, you can create a rule that denies all inbound traffic from the internet tag, but then create another rule with a higher priority that allows traffic from the Azure backup tag. It's simple, it's clean, and it's very secure. And there are tags for pretty much everything. This is just a tiny sample. But you've got the internet tag, which is critical for blocking traffic from outside Azure. Then you've got Azure Cloud, which is all of Azure's public IPs. And of course, you have specific ones for services like storage and SQL. The list is huge, which gives you a ton of flexibility. But wait, it gets even better. You can add regional scope. So just using the storage tag allows access to storage accounts anywhere in Azure's global network. But if your resources only need to talk to storage in, say, the West US region, you can specify storage.westus. This lets you follow the principle of least privilege, making your rules even tighter and more secure. Now, everything we've covered so far has been within the cozy confines of the Azure portal. But what if you're working in a hybrid environment?
To wrap things up, let's look at a super powerful feature that a lot of people don't even know exists. Using this data when you're not even in Azure.
This is an absolute game changer for hybrid environments. If you have a firewall on premises and you need to allow traffic out to your Azure services, you don't have to manually track those IPs either. You can actually programmatically fetch the current up-to-the-minute list of IPs for any service tag and feed that right into your on-prem firewalls.
And you've got a couple of options for getting this data. If you're building some serious automation, the Discovery API is your best bet. You can use PowerShell or the CLI to get the latest data whenever you want. But if you just need a quick check or you're building simpler scripts, you can just download a JSON file that's updated weekly. It has everything you need, no authentication required.
And check this out. Here's a fantastic pro tip straight from Microsoft. They guarantee that when new IPs get added to a tag, those IPs won't actually be used by Azure services for at least 1 week. This is huge. It gives your automation scripts or your ops team a full week's buffer to update your on-prem firewalls before any traffic starts flowing from those new IPs. It's a small detail that makes a massive operational difference.
So, I'll leave you with this final thought. We're all building on these platforms that are incredibly dynamic and constantly evolving. Does it really make sense for our security rules to be stuck in the past? By embracing tools like service tags, we can build security that is just as dynamic and just as resilient as the cloud itself.